You are watching Frankly Speaking Sports, live from Charlotte, North Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, the other day I'm looking around and I'm saying, I need to become part of a Carolina Panthers group that stays positive even in these tough times. And I'll tell you what, boy, have I found a group, the Carolina Panthers Den. It's on Facebook and you need to join today. This is a group that stays positive, has a good time, and interacts with a lot of other different Carolina Panthers fans. If you want to have a great time and talk about your team, encourage your team in a way that is done very professionally, then become a member of the Carolina Panthers Den on Facebook. Make sure to join today. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Frankly Speaking Sports. I want to welcome everybody on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, from Twitter Live, from Tobacco Road Sports Radio, and all the other great platforms that were on this evening. We're coming to you from a bunch of different Carolina Panther groups, as well as Panther Nation, Carolina Panthers Den, Roaring Riot, and just a few more to mention a few. But lots more and a lot to talk about tonight. You know, you look at today's show and you say, what is there to say? I mean, really, what is there to say? I mean, let me explain some words. There's frustration, nauseousness, disappointment, maybe confusion, but there is a lot to talk to. Here is a program that was, as much as I hate using the word rebuilding, and I don't like using the word rebuilding because usually when you use the word rebuilding, you succumb to winning. Now you have excuses on why you are losing. But at the beginning of the season, the rebuilding was sped up and it was put into fast forward as a team that compete. And obviously, if you watched the game yesterday, this team was nowhere close to competing yesterday versus the Dolphins as they lost by the score of 33-10, as I bring a couple things up real quickly so we can go ahead and start showing you. For all you folks listening, please share this to your timeline. I appreciate that. If you can go ahead and do that. But in about 30 minutes, we are going to have Fred Claire. That name may ring a bell to some of you. He's a former Major League Baseball executive who served in numerous roles for the Los Angeles Dodgers from 68 to 98, including the role of general manager 1987 through, that says 1988. That should say 1998. Let me go ahead and fix that real quick. But we'll be able to see, those folks, how do you build a program? How do you build a big organization? We got Fred Claire with us, and he's going to give us some of the secrets on building the Dodgers, including that great year you all remember back in '88 when Kirk Gibson hit that home run off Dennis Eckersley. So we'll talk to him. Then we'll conclude it up with some Hornets basketball who are playing tonight versus the Chicago Bulls. They were losing 60-54 with about 3 minutes left in the half. We'll keep you updated on that. But, this was a terrible, terrible game yesterday for the Panthers. I mean, it was by far the worst loss of the year, 33-10. Worst quarterback performance. I don't know if I can just say of the year, but it might have been the worst quarterback performance I ever seen in the 55 years that I was alive. That's how bad that performance was from Cam Newton, who was 5 of 21, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was pressured all day long. It was by far the worst offensive line performance this year. And to say that, it had to be bad because we all know how bad this offensive line was the entire year. 10 pass deflection, 5 sacks, 7 penalties. One was a stupid one on, I believe it was Hassan Reddick. That cost us 15 yards. We had a number of missed passes, 198 total yards, only 64 on the ground. We were 4-14 on third down possessions. We only had the ball 22 minutes and 26 seconds, which means the Dolphins had the ball for 37 minutes and 34 seconds. In other words, your defense was on the field for almost 40 minutes of the game. And they didn't play their best game, but heck knows why, because they can't get off the damn field. Also, we have 3 turnovers, a couple interceptions by Cam Newton. Now, you look at this team, and everybody wants to know what the answer is. Everybody wants to know what the problem is. But, when everybody keeps talking, they keep talking about the quarterback situation. Cam Newton. Did Cam look terrible yesterday? You're damn right he looked terrible yesterday. But it doesn't matter. And I said this before, folks, and I don't understand it. I say so much on this show, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, you listen to the local radio, and they're saying the same damn thing. Why don't they just tune into Frankly Speaking Sports? They would have had this information 4 weeks ago. First thing, it doesn't matter. How many times have you fans heard me say this? It don't matter if you put Tom Brady there, Joe Montana there, Warren Moon there, Drew Brees there, Aaron Rodgers there. None of them are going to win because you can't. The problem is bigger than your quarterback. What good is a quarterback if you can't protect the damn quarterback? And that continues and continues to be a problem. It doesn't matter, folks, who you put in there. This offensive line, maybe Taylor Moton, exception of him, is terrible. You need a complete facelift on this offensive line before you even worry about a quarterback to get into this team. Because the bottom line is no quarterback's going to be successful with this offensive line. It's got to be a major focus. It's got to be a major focus. And I'll say it again, it's got to be a major focus. But another question coming up today. Matt Rule, okay? If you guys remember, the ones that are, listeners, frequent listeners to my show, we did a preview before the season started. And I made it very, very clear, folks. I said, I came over from Tampa Bay. Obviously, I root for the Panthers now, and I'll continue to root for the Panthers now. Oh, don't start now, folks. We don't stop rooting for our team because they're going through hard times. We got to figure out what's wrong. And I've been saying this. Matt Rule, should he stay or should he go? It almost sounds like a song out there. Well, let me explain to you something, okay? This is now college football. Matt can't come in here and think he's going ahead and coaching teenage young men when, in fact, he's going ahead and he's coaching, training, and trying to develop grown adults. grown men. That's number one. Number two, accountability. I have never heard Matt Rule say it's his fault. It's Phil Snow's fault. It's Joe Brady's fault. It's his players' fault. Well, what the hell? What are you doing, Matt Rule? What are you in charge of? What are you responsible for? What are you holding yourself accountable for doing? You should be making sure when you start telling us you don't know what was going on, Joe was calling the game or Phil was calling the game, that's a big, big problem. You don't know what the hell is going on in your organization. This is a time where leaders need to rise to the occasion. And in simple terms, you are not rising to the occasion. Accountability is terrible. Leadership is terrible. And you can start seeing the players are not feeling comfortable under Matt Rule. He is losing the locker room. And if that is the case, and he's continuing to lose the locker room, and he can't hold himself accountable, well, damn it, Scott Fitterer or Tepperer, the owner, need to get their ass in there and replace him with someone who is more of a leader and holds people more accountable. But, that's the big thing right now, folks. They got to make a change. Right now, Matt Rule isn't the answer. There's a lot of opportunities in college football right now for Matt Rule to get a job. Unless something mysteriously is going to change about Matt Rule, which I don't see that happening, he is not the right guy for this job in Carolina. Okay, Cam Newton was a public relations stunt. Wake up, folks. I told you that, and no discredit towards Cam. He had a great, great career here in Carolina, but he is not the same Cam Newton. And you know what? You're never going to find out if he has any of the ability to come close because he has no offensive line. So we're never going to find out. But you can't look at this team and say Sam Darnold sucks or PJ Walker sucks or Cam Newton sucks. Not even you can say Will Greer, who played with us during the preseason, sucks, because they have not been giving a fair shot. Can we say, he cannot say Joe Brady sucks. You know why? Matt Rule is in charge of Joe Brady. If Joe Brady is not doing his job, it is Matt Rule's job to go ahead and hold him accountable. We talked earlier, rebuild versus no rebuild, okay? I hate the word rebuild. It gives you an excuse for losing. But if you are going to play this game and call it a rebuild, there has to be a defined process in place to get you to the promised land. And right now, he screwed that up at the beginning of the year because if he wasn't a rebuild, he put it on fast forward and caused a lot of development. You can't rebuild with this offensive line. You cannot rebuild. You have to go out there and reconstruct, refigure, and rebuild this offensive line. Also, McCaffrey is out for the remainder of the season. Okay, we've heard that before. There's got to be a decision made at the end of this year whether it's worth it or whether it's not worth it to keep Christian McCaffrey on this team. And don't get me wrong, folks, I love Christian McCaffrey. One of the greatest all-purpose running backs in the history of football. But at the same time, if he continually is going to get hurt and not be able to play, you need to try to get some value for him while you can. Maybe an offensive lineman from somebody. Maybe you go out and get a couple of draft picks, which your draft this year is going to suck unless you go ahead and make some moves and trade some people like a Christian McCaffrey. Maybe it takes somebody like a Dante Jackson on defense who has not played well against the pass, although he did have 11 tackles yesterday. Maybe you got to make a move. You got to give up something to get something in return. And right now, I'll tell you, Christian McCaffrey is your best chance at getting something back. And you got to play the free agency game. Okay? I'm not exactly sure right now what let's see if we can get that off. All right, we're having something here. Let me see if I can. All right. But all right. Give me 1 sec, folks. We're having. All right, let's take that out. That out. Okay. I am so sorry about that. We'll get right back to it. Let's put everything back on. Okay. Off season. Guys, don't think about a quarterback. Don't think about receivers. Don't think about defense. You need to think about the next 4 guys you need on your team. And it's spelled O-L, 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 O-L. Offensive line, offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. The only thing you should be thinking as a general manager, as a head coach, as director of scouting is looking at offensive linemen, whether they're free agents at the end of the year or whether they are going to be college graduates. But you got to solidify this offensive line, and you got to be willing to spend some money like you try to do with Cam Newton, who isn't going to help you one damn bit because he has no protection, and spend that money on an offensive line. Right now, folks, it's disgusting, nauseating, frustration, disappointing. Think of all the words. This team does not have a pure leader on this team. Okay? Why are receivers dropping a lot of balls? Is it because they can't catch? Come on, guys. Everybody knows these receivers are capable of catching a ball. Otherwise, they would not be in the National Football League. At the end of the day, it's A, because the quarterback's rushing the pass, or B, it's because the receiver is trying to do too much and they're trying to make a big play happen before they catch the football. That's why this is a team that's in a lot of trouble if they don't fix it up right away. I mean, this is a team that is playing terrible on all ends. They have a good defense. We know that. Okay? I don't even want to mention defense. But at the end of the day, this is a team that is learning how to lose instead of learning how to win. And we need to flip that around. We need to flip that around quickly. You know, you got a bye week, 2 weeks left. And we'll talk about that when we come back right after these messages. Ladies and gentlemen, the other day I'm looking around and I'm saying, I need to become part of a Carolina Panthers group that stays positive even in these tough times. And I'll tell you what, boy, have I found a group, the Carolina Panthers Den. It's on Facebook and you need to join today. This is a group that stays positive, has a good time, and interacts with a lot of other different Carolina Panthers fans. If you want to have a great time and talk about your team, encourage your team in a way that is done very professionally, then become a member of the Carolina Panthers Den on Facebook. Make sure to join today. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking Sports. I want to thank you all for joining us today on our several different platforms. For all of you folks that are listening and watching right now, if you can please do me a favor, whether you're watching live or on a tape recording, please go ahead and share this to your timeline. Takes 1 second. You hit the share button, and hopefully we can get some other Carolina Panther fans or other baseball fans or other football fans on to watch our show this evening. I would really, really appreciate if you can do that. But, we're talking about this game yesterday, and, our defense didn't play great either. But there was a couple of decent showings. I mean, what can you say about Shaq Thompson, Mr. Everything, 13 tackles yesterday. Dante Jackson, although he had 11 tackles yesterday, did not look very good. I'll say that right now. He did not look great. He's having a lot of trouble covering receivers one-on-one or whatever they're playing, and it's causing him a lot of headaches. He did have a lot of tackles, but he also gave up a lot of yardage to Jalen Waddles, who was targeted 10 times, caught 9 passes for 137 yards and 1 touchdown. And then what can you say about Tua? Tua, 27 of 31, only missed 4 passes on the day, threw for 230 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. And then Myles Gaskin, the running back, 2 rushing touchdowns. So, the Dolphins rush. Talk about a balanced offense. This is what it should look like, folks. The Dolphins rushed 40 times yesterday and passed 31 times for 71 or 72, whatever many plays they ran. So at the end of the day, we got a lot of work to do, folks. Doesn't mean we hate on the team. We don't root for the team. We don't cheer for the team. It's a bump in the road. We're not doing well. You got to trust the ownership, the general manager, Scott Fitterer, to do the necessary things to help this team win. And I'm going to believe in them. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, we'll see them make the correct moves that need to be made in order for us to get back to our winning ways here in Carolina. But, we got 2 weeks off now, folks. There's a bye week next week. When we come back, we play Atlanta, not Buffalo. We play Atlanta. Atlanta is not a very good team, but they are very capable of beating us, okay? They are tied with us as far as wins. Both teams have 5 wins. And, someone said to me, and, they are right, but they said, Larry, we're only a half game out of being in that last wild card spot. Guys, we should not even be thinking. This team is nowhere near ready to compete for a playoff spot. Hey, you know what? They got the toughest part of their schedule coming up. They got Atlanta. They got Buffalo. They got New Orleans. They got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers twice, okay? They can't, believe me, don't even say the word playoffs. This team is far from making the playoffs as far as the executions and the results they are showing on any given Sunday right now. So until they go ahead and improve their play and their execution, don't even talk about it. Their offensive line, like I said, needs lots of work. And, hopefully in the near future, we will get back to our winning ways. I'm going to see if I can give you guys, if my phone will work, a quick update on the Charlotte Hornets game. They are playing in Chicago tonight. So let me see if I can go ahead and get real quickly an update. It looks like they are in the third quarter. 9:15 left in the third quarter. The Bulls are leading the Hornets by 9, 80-71. As far as in the game, Terry Rozier is leading the team with 23 points. He's 4 from 5 at 3 points. Hayward has 8 points. LaMelo Ball, definitely an off game, 6 points only. PJ Washington has 15. So it's going to take, they're down by 9. This is nothing new for you Charlotte Hornet fans. This is a team which we were going to talk about. We'll go ahead and talk about it a little bit now, but that plays better in the second half. This is an incredible team. I've gotten to watch them throughout the year. When you look at this team and you look at LaMelo Ball, what he's doing is just incredible. One of the better young players in the league right now. I mean, you got off the bench, you got Aubrey, PJ Washington, Ish. I mean, just incredible off the bench. Then you got Rozier, Haywood, playing very, very, very well along with LaMelo. I mean, we got, McDaniels on this team. This is a good, well-balanced Hornets team. This Hornets team is a good team. They're 13-9 right now. 13-9. They're playing great basketball. They lost a tough one the other night. Who cares? They lost by 3 in overtime. I think it was 145, 142, or 146, 143. But nevertheless, a great, great game. They're scoring a lot of points. Doesn't look like that tonight. But, this is a team, if you get a chance to go out there, watch this team. This team is playing very good basketball. And, I would not be surprised right now if this team does make the playoffs this upcoming year. But right now, with 8 minutes left in the third quarter, it's the Bulls up by 12, 83-71. Let's go ahead and take a quick station break. And when we come back, we will have Fred Claire, former Los Angeles Dodgers executive and GM, with us. We'll be back right after this. You are watching Frankly Speaking Sports, live from Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Frankly Speaking Sports. I'm your host, Larry Frank, and want to thank all of you that are watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and also coming to you on Tobacco Road Sports Radio out of Winston-Salem. Welcome all of you to the show. Thank you for tuning in, and it is my great honor, thrill, and pleasure. We were talking about building team, talking about the Carolina Panthers earlier, what it takes to build an organization. Well, it may not be football, but when you talk about a guy that definitely has experience seeing a team at the bottom and then rising to the top, our next guest is definitely very familiar with that situation. He's former Major League Baseball executive who served in numerous roles for the Los Angeles Dodgers. He was with them from 1969 to 1998, including the role of GM from 1987 to 1998. Let's welcome in Fred Claire. Fred, how you doing today?
Good, Larry, and great to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Glad you were able to go ahead and get on here. I'm just moving a couple of things around here, so bear with me 1 second. There we go. All right, there we go. We're ready to go now. Just wanted to get all my stuff up. Fred, let me ask you this. One of the amazing things is I was reading a story about, I always wondered, how did Fred Claire get involved in sports? I mean, how did he get into a role with the Dodgers? And it's a really interesting story because you really, at the time that you got into on with the Los Angeles Dodgers, at that time you weren't even looking at it. You were actually working for a press covering the Dodgers, I believe, in 1969 as a reporter. Why don't you go ahead, tell us that story? I thought it was magnificent how you found your way into Major League Baseball.
Well, Larry, the key thing is that I always had a love for sports. And as a youngster, a pre-teenager, I really was trying to figure out, how do I spend my life connected with sports? And I thought at first it would be as a coach, because I knew my athletic ability was only going to take me so far. And then, as opportunity would have it and fate would have it, I had the chance to get involved in writing for the high school paper and then the college paper. And that led me into a journalism major. And that led me to the newspaper field. And that led me ultimately to the Dodgers in 1969 as director of publicity, when the organization was very, very small, very few people in the front office, which gave me the chance to know people like the wonderful Walter O'Malley and Walter Alston and the great coaches and the great people who were part of the Dodger organization. So that was my start, moving from the newspaper field to the Dodgers and being very fortunate to spend 30 years in that capacity.
Yeah, and when I was younger, and I said when I was younger, and I look back now and I kick myself in the head because I did some time with the New York Yankees in the PR as an internship way back actually when you were just becoming GM of the Dodgers back in '87, and I still kick myself because I never took the opportunity to take advantage of meeting the right people and getting a position that I know I felt I would have been very successful at. But it leads me to my next question, Fred. You take over a team in 1987 as GM. For some unfortunate reasons, you had to take over, but it worked out for you. And when you take over a team, Fred, first of all, what's the first thing you go in there analyzing, and what are the first things that you want to make sure are in place when you take over a team?
Well, when I became general manager at the start of the 1987 season, I knew that we were a team uh, certainly in need of improvement, because in 1986, we had finished 16 games under 500. And we had basically the same team in starting 1987. Well, the thing I knew, Larry, I knew that I was surrounded, even though our record wasn't good and our performance hadn't been good. I knew all the scouts. I knew all the minor league managers. I certainly knew all of the major league people. Tommy is the manager and the coaches. So I knew that I had a group of people that I could rely on, and that if we worked together and identified our needs to be better, that we would improve. We would come back, and that's exactly what we happened with a lot of moves in '87 when I took over, and in the off season came the World Championship in 1988.
Now, talk about the moves, and obviously one of the biggest moves or the most notable move. I won't say the biggest move because you made a lot of great moves going into the '88 season. I know. Remember, you picked up Orozco from, I believe, the Mets that year. You picked up Mickey Hatchie. You got, but the most notable and the most memorable had to be Kirk Gibson. He was a free agent. How were you able to persuade him to come to LA to play for the Dodgers?
Well, Kirk was someone that I identified, and the much of the credit goes to our scouting department. And one of our great scouts, not known by many people, was a man by the name of Dale McReynolds. He had seen Kirk back in his college days, probably even in his high school days. And Dale was a wonderful scout. And I remember reading his reports because he was always very conservative. But when I read his reports about Kirk, I could see the feeling that this great scout had for Kirk. And I remember calling him and said, Dale, you don't often use words and give a description of a player the way you are of Kirk. And he said, Fred, he is that special of a player. And so we made the signing, and Of course, it proved to be probably one of the few free agent signings where a player becomes the most valuable player. And of course, everyone remembers his historic home run. But I'll tell you, Larry, the key thing, this applies to football. This applies to every sport. This is what I've learned and know and try to pass on. When you're forming a team, the most important thing you need to look for is the quality of the people who are beyond their talent, which is obvious, beyond their awards. Who are these people? What is their character? What is their makeup? And that's really what drove me from the very first signing that I ever made, Mickey Hatcher, who had been released by the Minnesota Twins, and so many others that we brought in. John Shelby, who had a wonderful year and period for us, and who remains a dear friend today, who had been sent to the minor leagues by the Baltimore Orioles. Tim Belcher, so many others. Rick Dempsey, who I signed, who got the final out in the '88 World Series. All of these people, Larry, this is as true of these people today as it was 30 years ago. They are people of character. And I'll tell you why I was blessed. I started with the Dodgers, and I had the opportunity to get to know Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese and Roy Campanella and Duke Snyder and Carl Erskine. And I knew in getting to know them as people, even though they were former players, I knew that these wonderful people had a great competitive spirit, had great credibility, and that you could count on. You're forming a football team, you're forming a baseball team, you better be sure you get the right people on the bus.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Talk about, you mentioned the home run from Gibson. Talk about that moment. I mean, try to relive it. And what were you thinking? Here he is, couldn't even walk. He's limping up to the plate. I mean, what were you thinking before you hit the ball? And then, of course, talk about the moment after you hit it out.
Well, here again, I want to give credit to a great scout, a dear friend, Mel Didier from Louisiana. And Mel Didier was one of the scouts that I used to go out and scout the players that we would, or the teams we would be playing in postseason play. And he turned in a report, I can still remember his words. Against Oakland, if you're facing Dennis Eckersley and you're a left-handed hitter and it comes to a 3-2 count, partner, look for that backdoor slider. So Kirk Gibson comes up in the moment, as fate would have it. And Kirk is the first one to give credit and recognize this. The count goes to 3-2. In Kirk's mind, with Eckersley on the mound, here's the pitch. Here is that backdoor slider. And Kirk hits the home run. And I'll never forget the words of a gentleman that I talked to today, because it was his 84th birthday, is his 84th birthday. And that's the wonderful Ben Scully. We had a wonderful conversation today, bless his heart. Kirk hits the ball, and Benny's words, as only Benny could describe, in a season that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Yep, I remember it.
That was Kirk's home run, and Jack Buck gave also a very memorable description and all tribute to him. But Kirk was a special guy, Larry. He was as a football player. Right. I mean, that's who Kirk was. He was just as competitive as you can be. And if you're going to win, that's the spirit you need.
Yeah, he was amazing, and I watched him obviously before that in Detroit as well. Talk about winning the World Series now. I mean, you win the World Series, it's your second year as GM. I mean, talk about the feeling of taking a team that was what? I believe there was 73 and 89 back-to-back years.
Yes.
Like you said, there were 16 games under 500, and then going to win the World Series. What was it like winning the World Series and winning it in LA?
You know, Larry, we had been through such a tough time because, as you know, I had replaced Al Campanis. And it was and Al was a wonderful man whose words betrayed him in trying to defend his beloved game of baseball where there was no defense. But that had been such a difficult time for all of us in the Dodgers. But what I can remember, Larry, going through and beating the Mets and then playing Oakland, and I thought, you know what? The time is going to come here when, and I could feel it in my heart and soul, we're going to win. We're going to win this thing. And when we do, I'm going to have a chance to thank all of the people who are responsible. I'm going to have a chance to thank all of our scouts, all of our minor league people, our major league team. And that's what drove me and was always in my mind. And now it's been pretty well recorded that when Bob Costas asked me about winning the World Series, I said, I want to pay tribute to the people who made this possible, to our scouts, to our player development people, to our wonderful staff, and to our incredible players. Because here's the thing, Larry, as you know, when you win, be it a Super Bowl, be it a World Series, there is a bond that is formed that is never, ever broken. And we've had reunions, and with that 88 team, and the closeness of all involved with that team, you can feel it today as much as you could 30 plus years ago.
Talking about a bond, Fred, talk about the relationship between you and Tommy Lasorda.
Well, Tommy and I first met Tommy in the spring of 1969, and he was managing Spokane. And as fate would have it, we became very, very good friends immediately. And I told Tommy that I had played a little baseball in high school. So one day he challenged me to come out and take infield with his Spokane team. And then he challenged me to go into the game, replace Bobby Valentine at shortstop when Spokane was playing Bakersfield. So Tommy's relationship and our friendship was that close from the very beginning. And so we had a memorable relationship, having served whatever it was, 12 years as manager, general manager, which is always a situation where you have your own battles or disagreements, but you come out of the room together. And Tommy and I had a great friendship. We had a little separation at one point in time, but the last words I spoke to Tommy were the most meaningful words in my relationship with him. And those words were, Tommy, I love you. And he said, Fred, I love you too. And so it was an unforgettable friendship, and such an honor to be a friend of such a remarkable person.
Now it was in, I believe, '97 when Tommy had to stop managing. I know health reasons hit him. He had a heart attack, and then you had I believe you were involved in the hiring of the new manager, which ended up being Bill Russell. I mean, what do you look for? What should a GM look for? I mean, obviously you want somebody that's knowledgeable, but what do you look for in a manager when you start doing a search for a manager?
Larry, that's a good question. But in the Dodger history, in the Dodger tradition, think about this. Walter Alston managed the Dodgers for 20 plus years. And the Dodgers always looked to within. So when Walter was replaced, here comes Tommy. Tommy manages for 20 plus years. So now it's time to replace Tommy. And really, the guy that Tommy wanted very much to take that role was Bill Russell. And we were in accord with that. Tommy didn't make the decision, but it fit the format of the Dodgers. If you look at the Dodgers through some great world championship years, whether it was the pitching coach, whether it was the hitting coach, and indeed even the manager, we promoted because the people within our organization understood the philosophy that we believed in. And so that was the reason when that Billy Russell then became the manager to replace Tommy.
We are talking to Fred Claire, former Major League Baseball executive for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Somebody once told me that it was Fred Claire who came up with the famous saying Dodger Blue. How did Dodger Blue, that phrase, come about?
It's interesting, Larry, because I have to give some credit. I borrowed a part of that because what I wanted to do, my days in marketing, because before the general manager, I wanted to create a collegiate feeling to a professional team. And what struck me was that here was the University of Michigan, Big Blue, and the following that Michigan had. And I thought, if we can take the same type of format and use that with the Dodgers, because remember, Larry, the Dodgers, of course, had come from Brooklyn. It was the clown, it was the bums. It wasn't there wasn't an identity for the Los Angeles fans to really grab that. And so I came up with the idea of let's use this term, Dodger Blue. It has a collegiate, bring it together feeling. And we had the right guy. We stirred the paint. We came up with the idea. But the guy who helped spread the paint was the wonderful Tommy, who could spread paint as well as anybody. And so I knew we had it made when, after an initial effort, and this goes back, Larry, to the 70s when we did this. The term was never even known. But Union Oil came out with a bumper sticker after we had gotten the ball rolling. There were two words, no baseball, only two words. Think blue. And everybody in Los Angeles knew that was Dodger baseball. So it's been great to see that a legacy of Dodger Blue, Think Blue carry on, and what a meaning it's had for so many people.
Talk about today, GMing today. Talk about analytics and, people don't remember. We used analytics back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We just had books we carried around and the score books and things like that on different players and things. But today, do you think analytics are overused in the game of baseball?
I think, Larry, and I'm very familiar. I was the founding partner in a company with my wonderful friend and partner who was the genius behind the analytics, Ari Kaplan, who is one of the most recognized people in all of sports and business in the use of analytics. I believe in information, and so I believe in analytics. But I'll tell you this, you still have to get down to judging your people. You use analytics as part of it. You want to find out again the character of the person. The other, you bring it all together. You can't rely simply on analytics. It doesn't work. You're not going to win by doing everything on a computer. You've got to get the human element. So there's a place for it. But there's also, when you look at the great teams, again, be it football, be it baseball, whatever it may be, it's still a matter of knowing your people, having character, and using all the resources that you have. So I'm a believer in it, but I'm not a believer in letting analytics dictate all that you do.
Right. I completely understand that. Do you think GMs today have more say what goes on during the actual 9 innings of a baseball game than they did back when you were an executive, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s? You know, you had your manager on the field. They made a lot of the decisions. Do you think there's a lot more phone calls down to the dugout than might have been back way when?
From my viewpoint, at somewhat of a distance today, very definitely yes. And that's not the way that if I was advising a manager today who takes over a team, I would tell that manager, look, you take the information that is given to you and you use it and you evaluate it. But you, Mr. Manager, you make the decisions because that's your responsibility. And the last thing you want to do is be seen as a puppet. And if they fire your butt, you're a major league manager, you got a good chance of getting another job, but not if you become a puppet. So yes, I think if I can't know it factually, but I see from what I know within the game that a lot of pressure. And here's the thing, Larry. You're the general manager of the team, and you're telling the manager what to do, and you don't have success. Who do you fire, the manager or yourself? I believe in this. Responsibility, placing responsibility and taking responsibility are two of the most important things in the life, in sports and in business and in life. So I always accepted the responsibility for the position that I had. And I think that's the way that it has to work, and it works best.
Now, one thing I always wanted to ask you, Fred, I was waiting till later on in here, just a couple more questions, and then we'll let you run. You know what? And obviously, you know what player options are. You dealt with it, obviously, quite often, but I never understood something. I understand the business side of baseball. I'm not going to say I'm an expert, but I understand it. I study it. But why in their right mind would a GM want to send a guy down to the minor league? I understand because he has options left. If he still is best to be on the field for that team to win.
Larry, I don't understand it. I understand it. I don't agree with it. And I think what you're referencing is that in Major League Baseball now, a lot of teams will send down a player who may be the best player they have at a given position.
Correct.
Because they want to hold back his service time.
Correct.
Because service time dictates when you become a free agent. That, my friend, is a major mistake, and it's bad for the club because everybody on that team, including the players, knows that there's a talented player who could be helping them win today, who got sent to the minors because the front office is trying to manipulate the system. That's a mistake. Young general managers that are out there, don't do it. Don't do it, because everything about that ends up in a wrong way. The player becomes resentful. He knows he was held back. It lessens your chance of trying to sign him when he does become a free agent.
Correct.
There's nothing good about that, Larry. Nothing.
Last question I'm going to let you run, and probably one of the most important questions going on in the world today. I believe, after tomorrow or the end of the day, I'm not even sure what date it is. Okay, tomorrow is the 30th. The Cba Agreement with Major League Baseball and its owners does not look like right now anything's going to be decided by December 1st. Talk about, the Cba Agreement. I know you've been through this before as an executive, but with the bad taste that baseball left in a lot of people's mouth during COVID when they were out, and a lot of people, even though it's a business and they're bargaining and they're negotiating, it left a bad taste in people's mouth, especially those going through, COVID. How important is it for baseball? Obviously, it's important to get it done, but how important is it to get this quickly done so that there's not people wondering what the heck's going on in baseball?
It's very important, Larry, to come to an agreement. And I'm not pinning that to the next day or two. Obviously, there's a date when the collective bargaining agreement expires, but there's always negotiation as far as how you move forward. Here's the thing, I was in a position that in my 30 years with the Dodgers, we went through the greatest conflicts in the history of the collective bargaining agreement. Strikes, walkouts, the end of the World Series, the cancellation of the World Series in 1994. I know a chapter and verse going back to the days of Marvin Miller. And when I think about that, I think about the honor that I had to know and work for the wonderful Mr. Walter O'Malley. And I can remember one time that Mr. O'Malley was asked, when free agency just starting, and someone asked him, Mr. O'Malley, what would Sandy Koufax make if he was pitching today? And Walter spun that cigar and he said, he would be my partner. There, Larry, rests the answer. Baseball, management, and players is best served when there's a partnership. So my message to the owners and to the Players Association is get your act together. The fans don't need any part of a disruption. They don't need any part of hearing about salaries when players are signing for contracts of 10, 11 years for $300 million. Get your act together, because the most important element of the game that we're involved with is the fans. So let's get it together, get it done, and let's do it professionally, and not go through some of the turmoil that we've had in the past, because none of that has been beneficial.
Fred, before I let you run, talk about your book. By the way, thank you. I did get your book, so I want to thank you very much. But talk about it for people that are listening to the show, how they can get it, and why not just give a little synopsis of what it's about.
Thank you, Larry. Well, the book is Fred Clare. I can get it there. Fred Clare's Journey to City of Hope and Finding a World Championship Team. because 5 years ago, Larry, I came down or was struck by cancer. It was in my face, in my jaw, which resulted in two surgeries. The last one 2 years ago, where three wonderful doctors, in about an 8-hour operation, removed the fibula bone from my left leg and replaced my jawbone. So I'm so dedicated to helping the City of Hope, a great, wonderful medical center treating cancer, and how professional they are. I say of City of Hope, I was fortunate to spend 30 years with the Dodgers. The City of Hope is the greatest team that I've ever been a part of. And so I know the battle of fighting cancer, and I try to do everything I can to help raise funds and call attention and to give encouragement to people who are going through tough battles in their life, to let them know that they can win. They can win and they can celebrate life.
Well, great. Well, glad to hear you are doing better. I knew that about you already, but it's great to hear that you're fighting this and you're winning that battle. So the best of health to you, and I want to thank you so very, very much taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on Frankly Speaking Sports.
Great to be with you, Larry, and the best to you, and the best of holidays.
You too, and stay safe.
Okay.
All right, that was Fred Claire, former executive of the Los Angeles Dodgers. What a great, great interview. And real quickly, as we wrap this up, I know we're running a couple minutes late, but he talks about hiring the correct character. Listen to what you heard here, Carolina Panther fans, or all fans of all teams. The coaches, the general managers, the character of the player will take you further than the character of the athlete, because the athlete has that ability. Not everyone that has that ability has that character. Thank you all very much for tuning in to Frankly Speaking Sports. We want to thank Fred Claire, our guest, for joining us today. And until next time, everybody have a good night and stay safe.